What if the US government had access to the detailed financial information of every business in the country? What would that mean for privacy, financial security, and the business landscape? Hello there! Join me as we dive into a complex and ongoing controversy that's causing quite a stir in the business world. We're talking about the FinCEN BOI controversy. Now, if you're wondering what that is, don't worry, we'll be unpacking it all for you. In a nutshell, the U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, is right at the heart of this controversy. Tasked with implementing the Corporate Transparency Act, or CTA, FinCEN is facing a legal challenge that has put a temporary halt on the enforcement of the CTA's reporting requirements. So what's the big deal? Well, the CTA requires businesses to report their beneficial ownership information, or BOI. This means that businesses need to disclose who really owns and controls their operation. It's a regulation aimed at combating financial crimes like money laundering and fraud. But it's not as simple as it seems. The CTA has sparked a heated debate about privacy and corporate transparency. And it's not just a few businesses that are affected. We're talking millions of small and medium-sized enterprises across the country. So, you can imagine the magnitude of this controversy. Now let's talk about BOI, or beneficial ownership information. This refers to the details about the individuals who ultimately own or control a company. It's not about who's on the board or who's an officer of the company. It's all about who's pulling the strings behind the scenes. The idea behind the new rule is to prevent illicit activities concealed by shell companies. But as you can imagine, not everyone is thrilled about this level of transparency. As we continue with this video, we'll be delving deeper into the requirements of the CTA, the pushback from businesses, and the recent court decision that stirred the pot. By the end of this video, you'll understand how the CTA impacts businesses, what the court's decision means, and why this ruling could set the stage for broader privacy and corporate transparency debates. Let's start by setting the stage. The U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, has been tasked with implementing the Corporate Transparency Act, CTA, which requires businesses to report their beneficial ownership information, or BOI. Essentially, BOI is the information about the real people, the beneficial owners, who own, control, and reap profits from a company. It's different from the listed company directors or shareholders, as it focuses on the individuals who are pulling the strings behind the scenes, even if their names aren't on the official paperwork. The CTA's goal is to peel back the layers of corporate anonymity that have allowed illicit activities to thrive in the shadows. It's an attempt to shine a spotlight on the true owners of companies, and in doing so, help law enforcement agencies combat money laundering, fraud, and other financial crimes. But as you might expect, the implementation of the CTA has sparked a fierce debate. On one side, there are those who argue that this transparency is necessary to tackle financial crime, to ensure that businesses can't be used as tools for illicit activities. They argue that the CTA is a step in the right direction, a necessary measure to maintain the integrity of the business landscape. On the other side, however, are those who view the CTA as an excessive intrusion into the privacy of business owners. They argue that the act requires the disclosure of too much personal information, posing a threat to the privacy rights of millions of small and medium-sized business owners. This is the crux of the controversy, the balance between corporate transparency and privacy. It's a tug-of-war between the need to prevent financial crimes and the right to privacy. It's a debate that affects everyone, from the small business owner in a rural town to the billionaire entrepreneur in a high-rise. In the past, it has been too easy for bad actors to use shell companies to conceal illicit activities. This new rule aims to bring more transparency to combat that. So, what did the Corporate Transparency Act actually require businesses to do? In essence, the act mandated that all reporting companies, both private and public, with fewer than 20 employees or less than $5 million in annual revenue, disclose their beneficial owners. The beneficial owners, those who truly hold the reins of the company, would no longer be able to remain behind the scenes, hidden from view. Now you may be wondering just how many businesses would this affect? The answer is staggering. The expectation was that by the year 2025, over 30 million companies across the United States would have submitted their beneficial ownership information to FinCEN's registry. This new requirement was not just for show. The information once submitted would be accessible, but not just by anyone. Law enforcement agencies, financial institutions, and other authorities would be granted access for the express purpose of combating financial crime. However, the general public would not be privy to this information, maintaining a degree of privacy for business owners. So, what was the driving force behind the Corporate Transparency Act? The act was born out of growing concerns regarding money laundering, tax evasion, and a host of other financial crimes. The rise of anonymous shell companies, those without a clear owner or purpose, had been used in illicit transactions, and the government decided it was time to take action. The Corporate Transparency Act was designed to pull back the curtain, to expose those who might be using businesses as a front for illegal activities. By forcing companies to disclose their beneficial owners, the act aimed to bring a new level of transparency to the corporate world. This legislation was meant to address mounting concerns over money laundering, tax evasion, and other financial crimes, especially given the rise of anonymous shell companies that have been used in illicit transactions. But here's the problem: the law has faced significant opposition. Many critics argue that the Corporate Transparency Act is a direct infringement on the rights of business owners, violating some of the most fundamental principles of privacy. The law mandates businesses to disclose detailed ownership information, opening a Pandora's box of privacy concerns. In essence, the Corporate Transparency Act requires businesses to lay bare their structure and ownership, exposing the identities of those who have, until now, been able to operate behind the scenes. This, critics argue, is a violation of privacy rights. It opens up business owners and their families to potential risks, such as identity theft, harassment, and even violence. Moreover, there's a concern that this information, once out there, could potentially be misused. Critics argue that, while the intention is to combat financial crimes, the law could inadvertently become a tool for other entities to exploit. For instance, aggressive competitors could use the information to their advantage, or criminals could target business owners based on their disclosed financial information. Furthermore, critics question the necessity of such a broad mandate. They argue that the vast majority of businesses are not involved in illicit activities, and that such sweeping requirements are, in fact, a form of overreach. They suggest that a more targeted approach, focusing on high-risk sectors or activities, would be more effective and less intrusive. In addition, there's the issue of compliance costs. Small businesses in particular could face significant burdens in meeting the reporting requirements. For many, the time and money needed to comply with the law could be better spent on growing their businesses and creating jobs. As we can see, the Corporate Transparency Act is a complex issue with no easy answers. It's a delicate balancing act between the need for transparency to combat financial crimes and the need to protect privacy and the rights of business owners. Forcing businesses to disclose detailed ownership information raises serious questions about privacy and the potential for misuse of this information. Recently, a U.S. District Court issued a preliminary injunction to halt the enforcement of the CTA's reporting requirements. This decision, a significant development in the FinCEN BOI controversy, came as a relief to many businesses bracing themselves for the potential ramifications of the new law. The court's decision hinged on the argument that the CTA's reporting requirements could infringe on the privacy rights of business owners. The court agreed with the plaintiffs that the potential harm they faced, should their confidential information be disclosed, was a valid concern. The court also noted that the plaintiffs demonstrated a likelihood of success in their argument that the CTA violates the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. So what does this decision mean? Well, for now, it's a temporary respite for businesses. They will not have to comply with the reporting requirements until the court makes a final decision on the matter. This means that the millions of businesses that were preparing to disclose their beneficial ownership information can breathe a sigh of relief, at least for the time being. However, it's important to remember that this is a preliminary injunction. It does not decide the final outcome of the case. The court will continue to hear arguments from both sides before making a final decision. This ruling also opens up a broader conversation about privacy and corporate transparency. It raises questions about how much information businesses should be required to disclose and who should have access to that information. It also highlights the tension between the need for transparency to combat financial crimes and the need to protect business owners' privacy. In the coming months, we can expect to see these debates play out in the courtroom and beyond. The court's final decision could have far-reaching implications for businesses, privacy rights, and the fight against financial crime. This ruling could set the stage for broader debates on privacy and corporate transparency in the future. To sum up, the FinCEN BOI controversy revolves around a clash between the need for corporate transparency and the rights of businesses to privacy. We've discussed the Corporate Transparency Act, a law designed to combat financial crimes by requiring businesses to submit their beneficial ownership information. This requirement has been met with opposition from critics who argue it infringes upon business owners' rights and violates privacy principles. Court's recent decision to halt the enforcement of the CTA has added fuel to this ongoing debate. This ruling means that, for now, businesses are not required to submit their BOI to FinCEN's registry, a decision that has implications for millions of small and medium-sized businesses. The future of the CTA remains uncertain. One thing is clear: the debate over privacy and corporate transparency is far from over.